Hello, Hogstires. We got a good little show for you today. Scott McClune has a big interview with the Grant and Danny show this week. We're going to break that down. We also got some tackle talk and some other fun things coming your way. So stay tuned for the Hogstie.
Welcome to the Hogstie with your crew, Adam Tereski, Alex Zeese, Sean Conti, and Steve Thomas. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Hogstie. This is Alex Zeese talking to you right now. I am joined this week by Jamal and Steve. Guys, welcome back to fun-filled Hogstie.
That was a great intro. Yeah, it's good to be back. You know, we've always wanted to do a Hogstie remote, which is what I'm doing. I'm in the Hogstie West Coast offices today.
Wow.
So it's very exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm opening Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area. So
reopening. Remember, Kelly was up there way back when he was on the show.
Kelly did the show from California, though. See, I'm up in the Pacific Northwest, so it's cold.
It's not doom and gloom up there today.
Oh, it is dooming. I think to them it's not. To me it is. To me it's cold.
It's normal with them. They're used to it.
Yeah, it's like, if their sinuses dry up, it's, a bad thing.
Sure. I mean, I've only been up to Seattle once, but it's a beautiful city. So, I hope you enjoy yourself. Go get some nice fish from the fish market.
Definitely.
I've heard about, my biggest problem was that I had to find long pants.
Right.
Where I'm in Texas, it's, listen, if it's long pants weather, it's cold. And up here, it's normal. So that's my big problem right now.
Right, you got to find some blue jeans or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you get at least a couple of days sunshine out there. I was lucky enough to get one when I was out there.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's usually like the days that Steve's up there.
I'm not going to hold my breath.
No, don't hold your breath, and just avoid the Starbucks. That's my advice.
I was waiting for a guy in the airport, No, I'm not. I was waiting for a guy in the airport, and I thought about it. Maybe I'll just sit in Starbucks. But then I realized, that's not descriptive in terms of where I actually am. If I say I'm in the Starbucks, that's not really going to help them any. Because there's way too many. There's a Starbucks every 10 feet up here.
There is. Yeah. In fact, there's one in the Space Needle, or whatever it's called up there.
Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I remember going up there and finding that very funny when I was 17.
Well, and you guys realize that a person who is no longer a resident of the Pacific Northwest is Marshawn Lynch.
Right. Yeah.
Marshawn Lynch signed with the Raiders, and I don't understand. This is an All-32 topic, but it just popped into my head. I really don't understand what Marshawn Lynch is thinking. I understand what he's thinking. I don't know what the Raiders are thinking. Why you'd want a running back that's old, that's been out a year, it just boggles the mind. I don't get it.
I mean, low risk, high
he
reward,
maybe? He want that hometown love. That's all he needs.
Well, he wants the greenbacks. I mean, I know why he wants to do it. I just don't know why the Raiders want to do it.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Don't understand it either.
Hey, well, I mean, I'm with you, but happy for both of them. Hometown love. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Now, let me get into one thing before we get the show really started. That is that I've promised this for a while. I'm going to be giving away a pair of tickets, my tickets, to the Valor game on Memorial Day weekend, guys. So I just want to put this out there for our fans. If you would like to go to the Memorial Day weekend Valor game, which is on the 27th, it's a 1 o'clock game right now versus Philadelphia. That subject should change because, Wizards are now in the playoffs as of this point. So things like that can affect the schedule. But if people want to go, here's the challenge. All you need to do is write into thehogstie@gmail.com, put your name and your contact info, and answer this one question. Name a Redskins wide receiver who played in the Arena Football League. That's it. One question. Name a Redskins wide receiver who played in the AFL. 2 free tickets. Section 200. Pretty good seats. But I just wanted to put that out there because I'm not going to be able to use those tickets, so I want somebody to.
And it's not a Redskins wide receiver who's going to bust out of the Redskins and end up in the Arena League. We're talking about a player who already was in the Arena League.
Right. And this is a former player fairly recent, I'd say, who was in the AFL.
Yeah.
You guys really ought to be able to get that. So if you want to go to a Valor game, email us. Will we take a DM, or does it need to be email? I guess it needs to be email, doesn't it?
Probably email. I mean,
all right.
When we tweet it out, because we're going to do this on Twitter as well, I'll accept the DM as well, but,
And let's also be clear, it's the first one that responds to this.
Right, first responder, because I'm assuming, of the hundreds of fans we have, only a few probably really want to go to an AFL game. But,
It's free, people. Come on, you can
free
do
entertainment.
It's free.
Isn't that all you want? Free entertainment? Isn't that why you listen to this show? Because we are for free and we are mildly entertaining.
Or in the alternative, if someone wants to make a bid for these tickets, maybe Alex will. If you want to pay us a couple $1,000s to take the tickets, we'll just dump the trivia contest and take your money.
If you want to pay $1,000, sure. Help subsidize the hog side.
There you go.
Well, guys, let's actually get into some. We've talked about the Oakland Raiders and the Washington Valor. Why don't we talk about the Redskins for a little bit?
That's why we're here.
5 or 6 minutes in the show.
Man.
Let's talk about Scott McLuhan, because quite by surprise, he apparently went on Grant and Danny's radio show this week and just started chatting. He was trying to talk up the fact that he's giving away a bunch of Redskins gear and giving the money to the Redskins charity, which, that's a topic in itself that's kind of interesting. But he got into Kirk Cousins, he got into the draft, he got into, the whole situation with his departure. What did you guys make of that whole thing? I'm assuming everyone's listened to it now.
Yeah, I listened to it. And John Keim did an article on Wednesday about it on ESPN.com.
Everybody did an article.
Yeah, well, that's the one that's sitting in front of me.
Sure.
First of all, I think that was an unplanned segment. Because Grant and Danny were just talking about it, and all of a sudden, Grant said, "Hey, look who's on the phone, Scott McLuhan." So I really think Scott was just listening to the radio and decided to call in. But
I mean, he's got nothing else to do. He's like me; he just sits around and listens to sports talk radio all day.
Yeah, what else is he going to do? He's unemployed.
Right. No, I'm not unemployed, but I can do that.
No, but he is. There are the number one and two things that there was a lot in that interview we need to talk about, but the two things that stuck out most in my head were this. Number one, he didn't mention the name Bruce Allen once. He talked about Dan Snyder.
There's
been a lot
of discussion about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about how Jay Gruden was a good talent evaluator, but he didn't say anything about Bruce Allen. And number two, the thing that stuck out is, when asked about Kirk Cousins, where his ceiling was, his quote was, "His ceiling is where it's at right now. He's a good player who has proven he can win a division, and that's hard to find. A chance for 2 years in a row to go to the playoffs, that's what you're looking for." You can kind of take that a bunch of different ways, but, I think the most reasonable interpretation is, this guy is what he is. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but my opinion is, that's an insight into perhaps why the Redskins aren't falling all over themselves to sign him to a big contract. What do you think?
What? Go ahead. Okay. On the first part, I kind of, a lot of people have pointed out how he never really mentioned Bruce Allen by name. He mentioned, a lot of the coordinators, he mentioned the coaches, he mentioned his scouting staff that he had and how he liked working with them, and he never once said Bruce Allen. He said Dan Snyder, even, and said Snyder had been great to him. I think somewhat people are making a bigger thing about this than, they would be. I think if he had an axe to grind against Bruce Allen, I don't think he would have held back.
He's a classy guy, though. I think he was trying to be classy, because you got to remember, that McLuhan and Allen were friends, just like they weren't just business acquaintances. They were personal friends at some level.
Right.
And no matter what went down, and we've talked endlessly about what may or may not have happened, the simple fact of the matter is, for whatever reason, his friend fired him. And that can't be good, and I'm sure he's not happy about it, and I'm sure they're not going out for drinks anymore.
No. Well, and they probably weren't as much anyway. By the way, that's one thing that I think gets overlooked the most. It really sounds like McLuhan wasn't having any issues in terms of the drinking.
Yeah, we've talked about that and how the rumors got out, and I tend to think the Redskins sort of sandbagged him on it, which it really doesn't say much for the character of the people leading the Redskins, if that's true. Go ahead, Jamal. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me. I was listening, but I was saying it is important to remember because you say we were going to discuss the Redskins charity thing. That's
another thing
I guess
worth
we'll
discussing.
get into for a quick second. Yeah, but it is important, and I do hate when for me it comes off as like I'm pro Redskins front office. I don't want to make it to seem like that, but I just want people to just to keep in mind it is important that Scott McCloughan decided to call in to a local radio station and speak very highly of the Redskins. And he also, he put himself in the positive light. Making this call and speaking highly of the Redskins and speaking, I would say, because we really don't know what happened, and we have to remember
right.
that. We don't know what happened in there, and he didn't come off as a person who had an alcohol problem in that interview, and that's for anyone who had their name slung in the mud like that. They're going to make sure that they prove that that's not the case. So he came out in this interview and he killed it, and he did a hell of a job, and he made sure that he reassured the Redskins fan base that he'll forever root for the Redskins. He's a fan of us. He's pulling for him, and he really wished he could have stayed, but it just didn't work out the way it was. And my personal opinion of the interview, I respected the honesty. Obviously they couldn't get into certain things like the real reason why he was fired. He could only say it just didn't work out.
Right.
That's fair. But in terms of the looking a little bit deeper into it, I wouldn't want to necessarily think about the alcohol or if it seemed like anybody lied, because we really don't know. And he called in to somewhat kind of prove a point.
I think you have a good point there, Jamal. I mean, the rumors were out there. He never addressed it, and he sounded very coherent. He was very clearly not intoxicated in that interview. He did very well. He was classy. He took the high road. I think maybe you're onto something there. I hadn't really thought about that, but maybe he was out to kind of prove the rumors wrong and prove that he's still an upstanding guy. I think that's a very good point. You might be exactly right about that.
Yeah, and it's not to say that he doesn't mean it, but at the same time, he also has to prove, like I said, he also has to prove that what was said about him isn't true. He may still be pro Redskins, and that's fine. And I'm in favor for that. Obviously, I didn't want him to get fired, but at the same time, he has to knock off some of those rumors that was negatively spreaded by an anonymous source in the Redskins organization.
Right. And just to be clear, but what's happening from a legal perspective is, he's on a contract. He had a contract with the Redskins, so the contract was terminated for whatever reason, and so they are probably drafting or have already drafted and agreed to an agreement that terminates the contract that pays him a certain amount of money, but attached to all that is very likely a confidentiality agreement.
Sure.
And so that's the reason why he can't just go out there and, talk about this stuff endlessly, is because
right. You don't want to lose $5 million or whatever it would be.
Yeah, and we don't know what the number is, but go ahead.
Oh, so essentially, because I think they said the window for Scott to press, to sue the Redskins for because of what they said about him. In the Washington Post, I think the window they said is still available. Do you know? Can you share any details or what you may know in terms of first off why he hasn't even begin that process, or what does it say to the fans and people who's wondering what's really going on, why it hasn't happened? Like some people would think that if he did it, he would have some sort of reasoning, and if he didn't, it kind of speaks to what the Redskins were saying.
Yeah, I can talk to that. What you're talking about is defamation. Because what happened is, as we know, is the Redskins front office in some capacity or another spread rumors that he was drinking, and that defames his character. And so theoretically, yes, he might have a cause of action against the Redskins if he could prove that the Redskins spread the rumors. And who knows if we could actually prove that or not. And yes, in most jurisdictions, the window for defamation action, will stay open at least a year. It's a pretty short statute of limitations on something like that in most jurisdictions, but he'd have at least a year for it, so it'd still be open. But the reason why he hasn't done that is a part of his settlement of his contract, because the contract's going to be terminated, and the Redskins will insist, as a part of that termination and as a part of them paying him whatever they're going to pay him, that he waive his claims against the Redskins. And so, when he get the money, he's going to waive a defamation claim. He's going to waive whatever other claim he might have, breach of contract. And so he will waive his right to sue the Redskins in conjunction with getting the money. Mm-hmm. And that's why he hasn't said anything. That's why he won't say anything unless the negotiations just totally fall apart. And it will never be public and we'll never know.
So
but that's why.
So basically for Scott, it comes down to, do you want the money or do you want to protect your name?
Right. Yeah, because also remember that, it's from a defamation perspective, Scott McGloon's a public figure. It's really hard to prove a defamation case if you're a public figure, because the standard of proof is much higher, and this particular if he was going to get...
He's already had two recent, issues mm-hmm. with the...
Yeah, well, I mean, always in defamation case, the truth is the best defense. And so you're basically talking about a fact issue, because I have no doubt that he's not a teetotaler. He said that he does drink.
Right.
And so the issue would be, does he drink too much? And you're getting into fact stuff. It'd be a long, messy trial. And I think he'd be a fool to not take the money. Whatever the number is, why put yourself and your family through that? The Redskins would hate him. He'd never get a job. You understand, in the context of the situation, he'd never get a job in the NFL again if he was to turn around and sue the Redskins for defamation.
Right.
Never.
Speaking of his job, one of the things he mentioned in the interview was he's started up his scouting service again, which I guess that shouldn't really shock any of us. No. This was what he was doing to make ends meet before the whole thing ended, or the whole thing began, really. With the Redskins, he was, a freelance scout used by the Redskins. Even I kind of wonder if the Redskins will do that again. I mean, you almost got to think there's no way, right? But
yeah, I would think not.
Definitely not.
Yeah. But I want to get into the whole Kirk Cousins things you brought up.
Yeah.
Because I think that is an interesting point. The idea that he's hit his ceiling. Not that crazy when you think about what Kirk's done numbers-wise. You can't say, he's still got so much more to go, because statistically, his ceiling right now that he's hit is among the best in the league.
Yes.
Almost 5,000 yards. It's not like many people break that.
No, you're talking Drew Brees and,
right.
Not too many others.
Right.
Only 5 quarterbacks
in
the NFL that ever got 5,000.
And I think, has someone done it twice at this point?
Drew Brees has done it
Brees.
3 times.
Okay.
And then it's only but a total of 5 quarterbacks: Dan Marino, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford,
and Peyton,
and one other person. And I
think Peyton Manning would be the last one.
And just for the record, Kirk did not get to 5,000 yards last
just
season.
Shy
he just
of
got
it,
close.
Yeah, 4,900.
Yeah. So if he's at his ceiling, I guess the real question is that good enough for us as a team? And are you satisfied with that as fans? If you were to say, here's his ceiling, he can be at this for like 5 years, and he's your quarterback.
My honest...
Definitely.
Well, yeah, my honest opinion about Kirk in that question, I think he's one of these players that the stats make him look better than he is.
Mm-hmm.
Because... the 5,000-yard quarterbacks you just mentioned, Drew Brees is a franchise quarterback. Matthew Stafford, Drew Brees won a Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford's had a terrible team around him, but he's an elite franchise quarterback. I don't know if Kirk Cousins is that way. He's in an offensive system that lends itself to this sort of thing, and he's got Jordan Reed, and he had Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson. He had a lot of talent around him.
Matthew Stafford had Megatron for years. And
he did, but Matthew Stafford has got one of the best arms in the league.
Oh yeah, he's got a cannon. He's got flaws,
maybe
though,
the strongest. He does, but I would argue Matthew Stafford is a franchise quarterback, and I'd take him on the Redskins. If it won't happen, but if it ever could happen, I do think though, even if he's hit his ceiling, and this is Kirk Cousins, I think he's worth that contract. That column I put out a month ago, 5 years, $130 million. It can be done in a way that doesn't hurt the cap. It gives Kirk Cousins more money than he would otherwise get. It could be done. The Redskins just need to do it.
Right.
Even if he's at his ceiling, I'll take it. That's my point.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like he's at his ceiling, and I think that's pretty fair for him. I think the thing is for a lot of people, They when it comes to Cousins in 2016, the issue that really pissed people off was the fact that he had 4,900 yards, but at the same time he only had like 25 touchdowns. As opposed to where he had, I don't remember the specific number, like 41, maybe 4,200 in 2015, but he had 29 touchdowns.
Right.
So a lot of people don't not understand. A lot of people don't appreciate the fact that he had so many yards, but he had very little touchdowns. Where they expect something 30 plus touchdowns, and that's fair because in the red zone, it was an issue. In between the 20s, he was far more aggressive than he was in 2015.
Right.
When he came into the red zone and he had 20 yards to get into the end zone as a passer, he started to think too much, and he, obviously it showed in his statistics as well. So, it's fair to say that like he's reached his ceiling, but I do think that the red zone issues will help people realize that next year is what I should say. The red zone issues, it will help people realize that was just 1 year. It's something it's not necessarily a persistent thing. Like these type of down years happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that him reaching his ceiling and Scott McCloughan endorsing the fact that he reached his ceiling, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing in my eyes.
Sure.
No, and it's a pretty good ceiling to be at. And he was at 29 touchdowns in 2015 and 25 in 2016.
That's not that big of a difference when you think about it.
No, it's not. And also, I really blame Jay Gruden for a lot of the red zone issues because he made some just atrociously awful play calls. It's
that was
the
McVay.
You
remember?
Sean, yeah.
Listen, Jay Gruden is the head coach. He's responsible. It's his fault. Okay.
Sure. I'm just saying you can't say
he
made the play calls. He just okayed them.
I don't care what it is. It's his. He's the head coach. I put it on him. I'm serious. Maybe it's the military guy in me, and I get that Sean McVay was the play caller, but it's a collaborative effort. Jay Gruden's the head coach. The end zone fade thing has become a joke amongst the fan base.
Oh, sure,
because they ran it so much.
And by the way, didn't we see? Was that last week or the week before that they were doing fades with Crowder?
Okay, let's talk about this because I didn't play college football, but I did play high school football. Let me explain something to everybody who laughed at that. When you do those drills in practice, all the wide receivers run them. Okay,
yeah,
it's not a thing at all. They'll do the end zone fade drill like that. The not end zone fade drill. They'll do the goal line drill. They'll let Crowder run it. They'll let Doxson run it. The wide receivers get in a line and they all run it.
Right.
Yeah. It was kind of funny, but it's not a thing. So I hope nobody made that.
It was really funny. Come on.
Well, I'm about to say, you see, if people see it on Twitter, they're just going to lose their mind regardless.
Yeah.
If they see Jameson Crowder running a fade route on Vine or
if I see that in game one, yeah, then lose your mind.
I might break.
We have a bunch
of needing a new TV if I see that game one.
Because we have a bunch of redwood trees, as receivers.
Right.
Now. Every one of them is 6'3" or above.
Right. But. Okay, so there was a play calling issue that probably impacted Kirk's stats a little bit.
In execution at that,
yeah.
We should say execution was terrible in the red zone.
Yeah, it was.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. Well,
I just wanted to add that.
Is there anything else you guys take away from what he was saying about Kirk in that?
Yeah.
interview?
Well, yeah. Out of Keim's article, and again, it was Wednesday the 10th. He mentioned that McGlenn's run featured a mixed bag. and let's be honest, Scott McGlenn's kind of become a martyr in fans' eyes. Every time, I think people have a greater appreciation for what Scott did than what maybe he actually did. What Keim's saying is his run featured a mixed bag. That means guys like Stephen Paya.
Right.
Golston, the safety, there were, not everything worked out for Scott McGlenn, and one could argue that Bruce Allen's drafts may be better than Scott McGlenn's drafts.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue drafts at this point because you can't.
It's a little early. I get it.
It's way too early to pick.
But point is, Scott McGlynn did not bat 1,000 when he was at the Redskins.
No,
he had major blows, flaws, especially in free agency. I think he installed a better attitude and a better football-y vibe, if you will, around the team. But he didn't bat 1,000, and I don't think the fans should romanticize his time here in that way. And I think that's what Keim said in the article.
And I agree, and I know I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement. I think the biggest issue is the fact that how he was, it's just how he was looked like he literally, and people have said it in the Washington Post during the moment of when she was fired, and when Jerry Brewer even shed the light. He was looked at as the savior
right.
to a lot of Redskins fans, and it's the same thing with RG3. Like he was looked at as the savior when he was drafted to a position of need that we didn't have for over 20 years. These type of things, like when you was craving something for such a long time, and you finally get that guy with the reputation that he's a game changer, he's gonna get the job done. Scott McCloughan had a proven track record, and that's all we wanted. That's all we ever wanted. And when we found out that he's fired, and then it had something to do with not just the rumors of alcohol from the Redskins side, but from McCown's side is, and the Washington Post was that, it was not alcohol, it was something else. It's just, it props McCown to be, it doesn't matter what he did, what his failures were. It doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
That's just what we come into. And I don't see any, even though I agree with what Kime said, I just don't see it stopping anytime soon.
No, and it really kind of bothers me that the plan apparently is to not hire a GM. It sort of means that the Redskins front office is going to be the mess that it is for the foreseeable future.
Yep.
I've been a supporter of Bruce Allen to a certain extent on this show, and that I think he's a good team president, but there's no way that he needs to be in charge of personnel. And I think what I've concluded about this whole Scott McCloughan thing is, to my eyes, this Redskins leadership team is never going to have an independent general manager that is in charge of the roster that can do his thing without interference. Reasonable interference. It's not going to happen as long as we have the Dan Snyder, Bruce Allen triumvirate. It just isn't. That's what I've come to. That's my big realization out of this big mess.
Yeah, the best thing we can hope for is that they rely on Scott Campbell at this point to really take care of the draft situation.
Yeah.
And I guess Gruden too, because McCloughan did say Gruden is one of those coaches who loves to look at film of rookies and help with player evaluations, which is something that Scott never was used to. He was saying that Holmgren and other coaches he worked with in the past didn't really care about.
Yeah, but you don't want a head coach in charge of it, though. I think that's
not in charge
idea.
of it. We've seen that show way too many times, and it never works.
Yeah.
But
except if your name is Bill Belichick, then it somehow works.
Yeah, but if your name is Mike Shanahan or Joe Gibbs, your track record there is not going to be great.
And even Belichick, Belichick hadn't had the greatest drafts either.
No, what Belichick does is he finds under-the-radar free agents, signs them for short-term deals, and then lets them go.
And he's got that Brady guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Somehow that
kind of helps. If you have the guy who is arguably the best quarterback in the history of the game,
right?
The talent level doesn't necessarily have to be at its optimum in order to win.
Right. And a deal with the devil, I think. That's just me.
I've always called Bill Belichick the Emperor, and Tom Brady is Darth Vader.
Yeah.
That's what I've always thought of them.
It's about right.
I think we're getting too nerdy for Jamal.
Maybe a little.
Look, man, I understood the analogy very well. I don't know the ins and outs of Star Wars, but I know who Darth Vader is, and I know who all the other stuff. So I'm paying attention.
Somebody out there who's a computer guy needs to do a little, what do they call a meme? Where we have glue Bill Belichick's face onto the Emperor and Tom Brady's face onto Darth Vader.
So many times, Steve.
Well, and have him. Oh, really? And have him toss Bill Belichick off into the big pit there.
They might not have done that, but there's a million Bill Belichick as the Emperor memes out there if you look.
Okay, well,
or menace,
sue me.
as
I'm not a
some
computer guy.
people call it.
Yeah, Bryce Harper.
Yeah,
I'm not a computer guy. Sue me.
Well, okay, so. Since Gruden is someone who likes to evaluate rookies, and it's rookie camp this weekend, why don't we talk... Now, listen, all right, fans, we're not going to go through these rookies who were undrafted and are walking in here to, try out, because 99.9% chance none of them work out.
I have one name I do want to mention.
All right, Steve has one name he wants to mention. Go ahead.
Nico. I have two names. Nico Marley.
Nico.
One name.
Does Nico buy
Marley.
cars?
No, but see, the reason why I mentioned him is number one, he's a 200-pound, 5'8", 200-pound linebacker, and number two, he is related to the Marley family, Bob Marley fame, and the same family that. Like Rowan Marley, who I think is the son of Bob Marley, I believe. Somebody correct me out there. He was a safety at the University of Miami.
Right.
So they have football. Not only do they have great music in their genes, they have football in their genes. He's just very undersized, and so you got to look at him as a safety, perhaps, instead of a linebacker. But that's one name. And the other name is only because I watched film on him. Alex Snyder, the quarterback from Tufts University, was signed not signed. He was brought into a camp.
They need people to throw balls.
I watched some film on him, and he does have an NFL arm, I think. He does not have a very good deep ball, but he's got a fairly quick release, and had fairly good accuracy in the short and mid-range area, and his mechanics look pretty good. And so I think at very minimum, a guy like that could serve as our camp arm.
Yeah.
So watch out for him. I asked our friend of the show, Keith McMillan, about him, who everybody knows. Keith is Mr. D3 football. Keith didn't know anything about him, so that doesn't really bode well for Mr. Snyder. But nonetheless, I thought he could at least serve as a good camp arm.
For crying out loud. And that's not there are plenty of good small school D3 schools out there. It's not Tufts.
I've only heard that college like 3 or 4 times in my life.
It's a good.
Well, the one thing Keith,
it's a very good academic school. I
didn't
even know they had a football program until.
Well, one thing Keith did say is that they just recently restarted the football program.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's why I've never heard of their football program.
Yeah. So, but point is, Alex Snyder could possibly be our camp arm. We'll see how it goes in the tryout. But and he fit the part. He was 6'5". 220 pounds. Right. I mean, he looks like a quarterback. He's got the arm. Can't throw the deep ball, but that's not really Kirk's strength either, quite honestly. So, it's not really what you need in Jay Gruden's office anyway.
I mean, I was looking at some of those quarterbacks, and I think one guy only started one game or played in one game all of last year. And, he's being brought in as a camp arm for us. So he's
that's because
here for rookie camp,
Yeah, they need somebody to throw football since we've got 80 billion wide receivers on the roster right now.
Right. I mean, someone's got to play the quarterback role. I get that.
And speaking of wide receivers, right quick, just want to let everybody know. I don't know if he's going to make it. I doubt he make it past the final cuts, but Levern Jacobs from University of Maryland. I watched him at Suitland. He was a hell of a player then. First off, he cooked. I went to Flowers and I seen him the first play when I pulled up to the game was him beating our best corner 60 yards down the field for a touchdown on the first play I showed up, and I was like, who is that? And he went to Maryland. He did his thing out there. I think if he had a better quarterback, he definitely would have been a drafted wide receiver, but. Regardless, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm pulling for my man Jacob.
Well, I think it's funny you mention him because he's 5'11", 185.
Right.
And is he going to make the active roster? Probably not. But we have a place for a guy of that body type. We need sort of a backup slot guy.
Yeah, someone to be the lesser version of Crowder, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so if Jacobs show something in camp, I think he could work a role on the team eventually. He just needs to make the practice squad, basically.
Yeah.
But I think
the practice squad definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a role for a guy like that, I think, on this team. They need somebody who's not 6'3" to be the slot receiver. And oddly enough, we've gone from a bunch of shrimps not too long ago where everybody was 5'10", and now we've got them where they're all 6'2" and up. So we actually do need a backup slot receiver, in my opinion.
That is a fair point. The things that I'm kind of hoping we get to see out of this camp, obviously, any video we see, there won't be many. It'll be a few plays here and there.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see kind of where they line up these two Alabama boys in the defensive line. Are they on the same side? Are they both on the right side? Or do you have one on the left, one on the right? That's the kind of stuff I'm going to be looking for.
It was a picture out there where they showed Allen on the line, but I didn't see Anderson. So I knew Allen was on. He was at end, but yeah, definitely. I don't know if Anderson was on the edge.
I think Coach Tom Sewell in particular is going to be creative enough with the defensive line where I'm not sure you're going to see Jonathan Allen line up in one particular spot play after play after play after play.
Sure.
I think Allen is versatile enough. He was at Alabama. I mean, heck, you asked him the question at the press conference, Alex.
Yeah.
I think, depending on what formation the offense shows, you're going to see Allen moving all over the place. Whereas Anderson, I get the sense that, they may stick him on one side and kind of leave him there. I mean, would it be a good thing perhaps to have Allen and Anderson on the same side, perhaps because they know each other and they have good on the field chemistry?
Right.
Yeah,
that's
sense,
what I'm wanting to see early.
I just kind of think that Allen is going to be a guy, you'll see him, over the nose. You'll see him lined up in the 3. You'll see him lined up on the 5. I think we're going to see Allen all over the place. And my wish, by the way, for rookie camp is, first of all, no injuries.
Oh, yeah.
Please, God, no
Definitely
injuries.
At least, especially now to our draft picks. Like if no offense, if the third quarterback or the backup punter gets hurt, I'm not going to be as upset.
Our third quarterback is a draft pick.
Well,
Nate Sudfeld. Of course, that's Alex's arch nemesis.
No, I meant Nate the third quarterback in the rookie camp.
I still think that the Sudfeld family stole money from the Zeese family or something.
No, nothing like that. I just don't think he has a very good arm.
Hey, you don't have to lie to us, man. You don't have to lie.
Anyway, his arm has a weird hitch in it, and that he throws dirt balls. That's why.
But no, I'm about to say a lot of people said that though. His release is weird.
Yeah,
for sure. And it stood out in preseason last year.
Give the man some time, for God's sakes. Give the man time. Patience, people. Patience.
Right, you're absolutely right, Steve. So I won't comment any further.
All right. So
I'm always right. If everybody would understand that, I'm always right.
Hope we see from these camps. Like I know, rookie camp is weird. It feels like 90% of the time you just see them like they're kind of doing light stretching, and that's the only video you get.
I don't have much stock in the rookie camps. It's just camp for rookies.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing like really to look deep into. Training camp and mini camps is something I pay more attention to, but rookie camps now.
Fair enough. Steve?
No, no injuries. Hopefully everybody comes in shape and motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And gets it's all it is an acclimation to the NFL. I don't put a whole heck of a lot of stock into it at this point.
Oh, speaking of in shape, one thing that I kind of picked up on with the rookie Perrine, the running back that everyone seems to
Samaj Perrine.
Yes, everyone seems to be really high on him all of a sudden. I saw ESPN said he might be the steal of the draft, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I look at him, I can't help but think he either needs to lose like 10 pounds to be a little faster or needs to bulk up so he can just roll over everybody.
He's kind of like got an Eddie Lacy thing going for him, from a body type perspective.
Yeah, like 230. That looked like all muscle to me. Eddie Lacy was.
Well, that may be true.
I think that double chin for Eddie Lacy was showing in college, man.
Eddie Lacy's double chin. I will say that, by the way, on how to pronounce his name, I saw LaDainian Tomlinson on NFL Network talking about him, and he said Samaje. So I'm going to go with Samaje. Yeah.
Okay.
Samaje Perine.
All right.
I know people say things where I didn't want to say nothing. So
No, it's fine.
Yeah, it's
there's names like that in the NFL that everyone struggles with at first. Then there's people like Santonio Moss who somehow people keep getting that one wrong.
Bill Belichick was a guy.
Yeah, he always said Santonio, and I'm like, it's Santana. There's like a major pop singer or musician called Santana. This is not a weird name.
I wonder how long it took for people to stop saying Orcopo.
Oh, people still say Orocopo.
or Rapco.
Or Rapco.
Yeah, or Rapco. That too.
It was a Rapco.
I hear a Rapco a lot.
You know what's a really tricky one? Kurt.
Well, it's one thing if fans say it, but the guys who were doing that were the in-game announcers,
right?
Like the play-by-play announcers are calling him a Rapco.
Yep.
I just don't know how you could spend all week preparing for a game and not know how to pronounce the name of the starting.
The GMs don't get their own players' names right, man.
They met him for a brief interview too.
Yeah.
The general manager can't say Kirk Cousins right now. The last general manager kept saying a Rapco. I mean.
You draft people you can't even pronounce their names.
Right.
I mean, hopefully people can forgive me for Samaj versus Samaje, but for God's sakes, I mean, Santana is not difficult.
No.
I think they probably point to the player on their draft board and be like, just draft him.
Yeah.
And everybody else say their names.
And then you hope he gets a cool nickname or something.
Yeah, him.
Bowling ball.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him Bowling Ball from now on.
Bowling Ball? I like Bowling Ball.
Yeah.
If his nickname becomes Bowling Ball, that could only be a good thing for us, right?
One would think.
Speaking of guys with names that can't be pronounced, why don't we talk about tackles? Because we got a guy on there with a name you can't pronounce, Tyne Seki, or as I've heard it, Nishiki Ck. You know, like people keep mispronouncing his name.
Fortunately, we know how to speak Thai. We know how to say Tyne Seki's name because we interviewed Tyne Seki.
We did.
So we do know how to. We do know how to speak Tyne Seki. You want to do the poll first on this?
Yeah. Why don't we do the poll first? Since if we're talking tackles, let's do the tackle poll.
All right. Yeah, we did a tackle poll, and everybody forgive me. I mistakenly set this poll to be a much shorter time period than I intended. So sorry if you didn't get a chance to vote. It was my fault. And once I realized it was already out there, so sorry.
Say lovey. It's a weird poll.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so the poll question this week was, Trent Williams is rising up the ranks of all-time great offensive tackles. What more does he have to do to be a Hall of Famer? And the options we did, and once again, we're always limited to the Twitter poll thing. Number 1, win a Super Bowl. Number 2, he needs more Pro Bowls. Number 3, just start 5 more years. Or number 4, he won't make the Hall of Fame. So I'm going to save Jamal for the end because Jamal always gets these right. Mm-hmm. So Alex, I will ask you as I always do every week. What do you think, and what do you think the fans voted for?
Oh, I think because of how the NFL and Hall of Fame works, if you don't get to a Super Bowl as like a lineman, you're not getting in. It's bullshit, but I think that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Especially now, where it's so quarterback centric. I fear that the Hall of Fame at some point it's just going to be they're going to pick 5 quarterbacks every year and put them in and forget all the other positions.
Good.
Now, what do I think the fans put? I think the fans probably said 5 more years of good play.
Okay. Jamal, what do you think?
Same thing as Alex. 5 more years of good play.
Okay.
Initially, when I saw the poll, I think that's what I voted for. But initially, when I saw the poll, I figured he may need a Super Bowl to solidify it because Pro Bowls at this point we realize it doesn't really mean anything. But I was thinking like Super Bowl or more All Pro selections. But five more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, and surprisingly enough, you both would be wrong. The people.
My streak is over.
I know that's the first time. I think that's the first one you've missed, Jamal, in a while at least. Okay, by a vote of 35%, the winning choice was win a Super Bowl.
Really?
35% of you out there said, yeah, win a Super Bowl. 33% of you said just start 5 more years. And by the implication of that is he's already done enough. He just needs to kind of keep on the same track. 25% of you said he needs more Pro Bowls. And then a whole 7% of you said he won't make the Hall of Fame. From my perspective.
And you know what? To be honest, even though I love Trent Williams, that 7% is probably more likely right than not.
Well, what I was about, funny you say that, because what I was about to say is, I want to be positive because we're Redskin fans and everything, but the objective person in me says that Trent Williams has never been the best offensive tackle in the league. Joe Thomas is the best offensive tackle in the league, and there's a couple others, Jason Peters, and a couple other guys out there who are great offensive tackles. And so it may be a case where Trent Williams makes the Hall of Very Good, but is ultimately, if not shut out, it's going to take him a while to get there. I think he probably needs to continue on to make more Pro Bowls. I think unless look, Jamal said it. We know what the Pro Bowl is. It's a popularity contest, but everybody who makes the Hall of Fame anymore has got a whole bunch of Pro Bowls. It is a factor. It is a criteria that the voting committee looks at. The other thing that needs to be said about Trent Williams is, if he gets another drug suspension, that'll be his 3rd one. And, he right now he's in phase 3 of the drug program.
Right.
If he gets he's in phase 2. If he gets another suspension, it's going to be for a year.
Mm-hmm.
In which case,
it 10 games or a year?
It's a year.
Yeah, I don't think there's a 10-game slot anymore. I think there might have been.
Well, I mean, the performance
Lane Johnson was suspended.
That was performance enhancing. That was performance enhancing drugs. Okay, gotcha. And so and that must be said. And he's about to ruin his career with the drug thing. He needs to in the words of Stephen A. Smith, lay off the weed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to try to do a Stephen A. Smith impression, but lay off the weed.
No, I got in trouble for mine. So yes.
Yeah. Okay. Some comments here. 50 gut for the win at Capitalist Life. Said what I said, which is lay off the drugs. K Welsh 83 at K Welsh 83 said, sit back, relax, and enjoy watching for 5 more years because he's first ballot. That's his opinion. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's you're entitled to your opinion. Adam at DC9 Adam W said he certainly doesn't need to win a Super Bowl or else Joe Jacoby isn't still waiting, which, very good point. He just needs to keep at his level for a while longer because, old Joe, friend of the show, Joe Jacoby, has 3 rings, and that doesn't seem to help him. And then the final point, because I like this comment, Billy Roberts at Billy Roberts Jr. said, ask Joe Jacoby. To which my response to that was, we already did.
Yeah.
Which we did. So that is the poll this week. I think it'll be fun to see where Trent ends up, 5 years from now at a very minimum.
Right.
So, there you go.
I mean, I think we would all agree that he's really, really good. He's different from so many other great tackles we've had in that he's by far the most athletic. Nobody gets downfield on a run block like Trent Williams. Nobody. Maybe not in the history of the NFL. He does things athletically that I've never seen from that position.
Well, since you're talking about that and doing my research, since we're about to start,
I think we've started. Let's say we've started.
Yeah, our position group breakdown is on tackles this week, and can you guys guess what Trent Williams ran in the 40-yard dash at the combine? I'll just say when he was listed at 6'5", he was listed at 6'5", 215. Okay, Jamal said 4'7". What do you think, Alex?
I was going to say I thought it was like something almost like 4'5". Like, I thought it was ridiculous.
4.88.
4.88?
Oh, 4.8.
That's still ridiculously good for a tackle.
He might have run something different at the Oklahoma Pro Day. I didn't look that up.
Everybody run faster at OU Pro Day, from what we hear.
Malcolm Kelly.
OU
remember Malcolm Kelly had that issue. Mm-hmm. He ran like a 4.6 at the combine. And
I think they have these sticky, weird stopwatches that they must be using. They're really slow to start.
Well, let's first talk about Trent. I think the thing about Trent, if you look, obviously he's in, all pro level offensive tackle,
right.
And tackle seems to be the only thing we consistently draft well, just as a aside. But the thing about Trent to me is his injuries, because, I looked up his stats and there aren't too many offensive line stats. But I looked at games played, and it's gone down every year since 2013. He was drafted in 2010, so his games played goes 14, 10, 16, 16, 15, 14, 12 last year. So it's gone down every year.
But the 12 last year was not injury, it was suspension.
Okay, but does it matter?
Well,
I think he was playing hurt though.
He was
suspension, like right before that suspension, he was playing hurt. If I'm not mistaken, I can't remember.
No, you're absolutely right. He was, and it had probably saved a season in terms of body and everything. I think that's the thing with Trent. He's been really beat up. Mm-hmm. He's a very tough guy, even for a football player. He has played through a whole lot of injuries. This is the guy that got hit on the head with a beer bottle and didn't go down.
Champagne bottle
at one of those Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
Was it a champagne bottle?
Yeah.
Okay. I think if something limits the potential of Trent Williams, it's eventually going to be the injuries.
Yeah.
He's okay for now, but fast forward to where he's a 10-year vet. Is he still playing 15, 14 games a year, or is he out half a season?
Well, and that's to go back to my point about his freakish athleticism, if he keeps playing with knee injuries, and a lot of his injuries seem to be leg and knee injuries, which isn't surprising given the position.
Yeah.
Like, in 5 years, is he going to be able to kick outside on a block? Is he going to be able to get downfield at all? I mean, probably not if he's playing with those all the time.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point. I mean, what's going to happen when his injury status limits his athletic ability?
No, I think
it's not something. It's not something we have to talk about this year, but they may. Is Morgan Moses? Maybe they need to flip him at some point. 4 or 5 years from now, maybe Moses becomes a left tackle and Trent becomes a right tackle.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah. So that was what stuck out in my head about Trent Williams.
I mean, we signed Moses to a long-term deal for a very, good amount of money, and that could be why.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, Trent played right tackle at Oklahoma. If people don't realize that, he played a whole year at right tackle in Oklahoma because, who got drafted the year ahead of him? Phil Loadholt was the left tackle at Oklahoma before Trent.
Where's Phil Loadholt now? I don't, following
but
where
he didn't prove
are.
to be. He didn't prove to be the player that Trent did ultimately, I think. But he's a quality player in itself. We'd have to get Adam to opine on Phil Loadholt, I guess. But anyway, I think that's my view of Trent long term. So, unless Jamal has anything to add. I think
it's true.
You have anything to add on Trent?
Not necessarily. I agree. I think that the biggest thing is the drug, any more drug issues or injuries per se. So I mean, I think if he can if we get about 5 more years out of him of quality left tackle play, then I'd be perfectly fine with that. We just got to see how it turns out. Well, he's been here for 7. It'll be his 7th season, so
it'll be his 8th. No, it'll be his 8th season.
Right. Drafted 2010, and this is 2017, so that's 8 years.
8, yeah. And so if you add 5 years to that, you're talking 12 or 13 year vet, depending on which you count.
And that's quality. That's a quality career for a left tackle.
Anything over a decade is impressive for a tackle.
So I'd be satisfied with that. Obviously, we'd have to think about the flipping Morgan Moses to the left side. If that time comes, if it seems like Trent Williams' play is decreasing, but I'm definitely cool with.
I mean, people remember that Jacoby played a right tackle a little bit at the end of his career,
right?
We've really been blessed. If you really think back to the history, we need to move on to other players, but if you think back to the history of the left tackle at the Washington Redskins, we have one heck of a history. Trent Williams goes back to Chris Samuels, who goes back to Jim Lachey.
Well, not quite. There was like a little gap of like 2 years between.
I understand, but I get it. But I mean, it wasn't the Lachey to Samuels wasn't direct. But point is, it goes Williams, Samuels, Lachey, Jacoby, going all the way back to the very early 80s.
Right.
I mean, that's a heck of a run, and I think of all the position groups, the Redskins have done the best consistently at a left tackle.
Yeah,
so,
and
that's pretty fair.
Yeah, it is impressive when you look at it. Yeah, there was because I remember I was doing the math once, and I realized, oh wait, there's like a 2 to 3 year gap between Lachey and Samuels.
Yeah, there was. It wasn't
in the
North
Turner era, but
excuse me. Morgan Moses, 6'6", 314 from Virginia. Obviously, just signed the big contract. He's actually signed longer than anybody else on the roster now. By the way,
yeah.
He's signed through 2022. We talked about this before, but I wanted to correct myself. By the way, I looked at some bad data in the Morgan Moses contract talk we did last weekend.
Right.
I should have known the side I pulled up was wrong because it was obviously wrong. He does not have a $40 million dead cap. I mentioned something about a $40 million dead cap last year. It's not that. It's much better. It's $17 million dead cap this year. And in 2018, it's $15 million. The point I was making is the same, which is we're locked into him for 3 years, but the dead cap isn't nearly as onerous as that one side I got it from. I won't mention what side it was because you guys screwed me, but I should have known. So anyway, after staring at all these numbers for as long as I have, I should have known that was totally wrong, but I wasn't paying enough attention.
But 40 is right around what his cap total was, so they were probably just being sloppy and saying, well, his cap total is this, so that's his dead cap.
Yeah, probably so. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is his dead cap for 2017 is $17.6 million. I'm curious as to what you guys think about Morgan Moses' play on the field because this is the guy that I was personally brutal on in his rookie year because I thought he looked terrible. He really just turned it around, and he's become one of the better right tackles in the league, and we're very fortunate to have him, as our starter. So what do you guys think of Moses?
I mean, I think it was a evaluation that, and this was pre, Scott McCloughan. This was, I guess, Scott Campbell who was really doing the bulk of the work here.
Well, I mean, you got to give Bruce Allen the credit.
Yeah, and Bruce Allen
frankly.
too.
Yeah.
But they said right at the beginning, this guy won't be ready right away. He needs a year or two to get right, but he'll be a starter for us. And they nailed it. It took him a year. They said the same thing about Spencer Long, that it would probably take him 2 years till he was ready. Those were two good evaluations. And, because I'm a Redskins fan, if you can evaluate good offensive line talent, that's all I want. I'm still of that mentality that you can do so much more playing football with good linemen than you can with a great wide receiver, a great running back. A good line makes everyone else look better. I'm really happy with Moses. We're not going to talk about inside guys today, but I'm happy with the scouting and evaluation they've done on the line lately.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Morgan, and I like how he's developed as well. The 2014 year, he had a gift made about him in the Seahawks game where he got caught staring in his face while the play was on, and got Kirk Cousins lit up by Bruce Irvin. So he's came a long way since that, and I also think that that game he wasn't really prepared anyway, but he's came a long way. 2015 took over as the starter, and he hasn't gave up that job since. I think the issue with Morgan as well is the same thing we worry about with Trent in terms of injuries. He's had, I think he missed some time last year, if I'm not mistaken, because he was injured, or did he play? Who am I thinking of?
Well, yeah, no, you're thinking of. No, it was him. He missed. 2014, he was injured. He had the Liz Frank injury in 2014. Oh, right. He's had 2 years of health since then. He's played 16 games, but it was the first year you're talking about.
Yeah, he was dealing with a foot injury, and he just played through it.
Yeah.
And I think him and Sean Laval, we're not talking about interior today, but Sean Laval was dealing with an injury as well. It was those two that I was thinking. Well, shoot, basically Trent Williams, Sean Laval.
All of them.
The only person healthy was really Brandon Scherf.
What do they say? No one goes through an NFL season fully healthy. So
here's our Morgan Moses trivia question for the day. Since we did it with Trent Williams, guess Morgan Moses 40 time at the combine.
Okay. I don't remember this.
I don't remember at all.
I'll take a guess though.
Take a guess.
4.9 or 5 flat.
Okay, what do you think, Alex?
I'm going to go 5.2.
Neither one of you are. You're both are giving him too much credit. He ran a 5.33 at the 40,
well,
which, considering that he's 6'6", 315, and by the way, he ran it. He just, he jumped 8'10" in the broad jump. And a guy that large jumping almost 9 feet is pretty impressive.
No, I mean, and we talk about it all the time. Is there anything more overrated than the 40 times of a offensive line?
Offensive line, yeah. Well, what is more relevant is the 10-yard split time.
Right, right.
It might just be the 10-yard
the short burst one, yes, but in general, the 40, no. I don't expect most linemen to run 40 yards downfield.
And I'll just give you guys an example of the athleticism of Trent Williams. If you compare his 10-yard split time, Trent at the combine ran a 1.72 split, and Morgan ran a 1.94. So that just goes to show you just how athletic. Everybody we've interviewed on this show, every offensive line we've interviewed has just marveled about the athleticism of Trent. And these are NFL players who are playing with him, played with him. It's not a myth to suggest that Trent might be the most athletic lineman in the league.
Oh yeah,
he might crack top 30 in the top 100 this year. I don't know if you guys watch it, but I think he's cracking top 30 this year.
Do you think so?
Yeah, that may be true.
I mean, I was wondering if he'd drop back because of the suspension and, let's be honest, his injuries have kind of slowed him down a little.
Yeah.
In terms of play, but.
You want to move on to our next guy on the list here?
Yeah, let's move on.
We're kind of running out of time. Ty Nsekhe, if you want to hear a big, long history about Ty Nseke's life and times, you can go back to our interview from, 2 years ago?
Yeah, one of our first interviews.
The thing about Ty is, I'd point out, is he's 31, now. He's going to be 32 in October, at the end of October. So he's getting up there in years. He's only had, I think, 2 years of credited service time. He's not beat up.
A lot of time in the minors.
He's going to be a restricted free agent next year. So, I mean, the Redskins are going to keep him, odds are, again, for 2018 if they want him. He's a very quality backup. His issue, he's just fighting Father Time.
Yeah.
That's Ty and second.
He's a restricted free agent again next year?
Well, no, okay, let's clarify. He was an exclusive rights free agent this year.
So we signed him to a one-year tender kind of thing.
Yeah, but the exclusive rights free agent means he can't negotiate with anybody, period.
Right.
Cannot. A restricted free agent means he can go out and get another offer, and depending on where they tender him, they can match him or not. So the exclusive rights free agent really isn't a free agent at all, basically. So he's going to move up.
No, I was saying, I was wondering. I was just about to say, I was wondering why he wasn't getting any offers, why he didn't take an offer for a starting role.
Well, that's exactly the reason, and he did just sign the 1 year tender this year. For a reason. Obviously, I don't know if the Redskins offered him more than 1 year, but
I would doubt it.
To sign.
That doesn't seem like our MO these days. Is the one thing I will say about Ty, and I love having him on the team. If I were the GM, I'd be so tempted to try and trade him for something because of the age, and I think there's enough teams out there who would need a right tackle or even a possible short-term left tackle.
You know what the problem with it? You know what the problem is with that?
Who would you trade him? I mean, what position group would you trade him for? Because backup lineman is pretty valuable.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Well, that's the problem. Is you got behind him. We're to finish up our position group breakdown. We've got Vincent Painter and John Kling behind him.
Right.
Kling especially is totally unproven.
Right.
Vincent Painter has been around a little bit, but he's unproven too. And on top of that, he's a little small for swing tackle anyway. He's only 6'4", 306, which doesn't really fit the massive offensive lineman trend.
It seems like everyone's 6'6", 320 now, right?
Yeah, Kling is bigger, but Kling is 6'7", but he's only 305, so he needs bulk. So I think Ty is almost too valuable to trade away, because I think God help us if Trent goes down, which he could, as we talked about. You going to throw John Kling in there at left tackle?
No, and
you can't do that.
The flip side of this, but I mean, you got to also see it as Ty is not a long-term solution at any tackle position for us, right? I mean. Because of the age.
Long term, no.
Because
of the age.
The fact that his contract in 2018, he'll sign another 1 year deal, then he's gone in 2019. So maybe it's something you do next year. But, you got to moneyball every once in a while with talent, Well,
I get your point. I mean, it's, do you trade a valuable commodity like that, and get a draft pick back or something else? I mean, I get it, but in this case, I just don't think we have the personnel behind him that would be willing to step up. I mean, unless, Adam isn't here today. I mean, unless somebody knows something about Vincent Painter that we don't know.
Sure.
I'd be too nervous to trade away Ty and second.
Well, when I go to training camp, whatever weekend I go this summer, that's something I'm going to start looking for is who are because we have good backup linemen, but they're all older, I feel like. I feel like we need to start seeing some of these younger guys come up.
Well, there's a bunch of them on the roster. Yeah. We'll talk about interior guys next week.
Right.
I think it's next week.
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at the super secret order chart that we created.
Yeah.
All right.
It's super secret because it's buried somewhere and we can't find it.
Yeah, it's buried in like 500 emails about other nonsense. Well, we're running out of time here, but let's finish up with a fun little topic, Steve, that you brought to our attention. I'm going to let you kind of take the lead here, but Rich Tandler came out with a best case, worst case for individual players kind of blog post, and it's kind of neat, and you wanted to do something with it. So why don't you take it from there?
I thought so. Unless we're going to have to do this kind of fast, because I think we could spend 30 minutes on this if we wanted to. But Tandler did best case, worst case scenario for stats for Cousins, Pryor, Crowder, Reed, and Rob Kelly. And so what he said for Cousins was best case scenario 5,100 yards, 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Mm-hmm. Worst case scenario 4,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. So where do you think best case, worst case Kirk is going to fall this year?
I mean, first off, let me say, if his worst case is still 4,500 yards, and
yeah, that's pretty darn good.
that's like saying my worst case is that I'm going to be a millionaire, you know? But I think he's probably going to actually be closer to that because with the addition of another running back, and I think Fat Rob kind of helps emerge and stabilize the run game a little, I see us running it a little more. So I'm going to say he goes worst case. In at least yardage.
Yeah. Jamal, what do you think? Best case, worst case, Kirk Cousins?
Hold on, wait. Are you asking us our own, or are we saying which one is more?
I was originally asking your own best case, worst case. Alex kind of answered it differently.
Sorry. All right. That's all right. I'll be quick. So I think the best case for him, just off the top of my head, I think I could see him with with the retooling of how our offense is shaped. I could see like 4,800 yards. Best case, probably 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, about the same thing that he's been doing this entire time since he's been starting since 2015. Worst case, about 4,200, 4,300 yards, 26 touchdowns, or probably about 12 interceptions. I'm going to just stay on the average of the interceptions. So, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions.
I actually was kind of right exactly along the lines with you. What I wrote down was best case 4,950. I think Rich's Tandler is overrating Cousins' best case scenario. It's 5,000 yards is rare, man.
Yeah.
The idea that he's going to 5,100 yards is a lot of yards. And the worst case is he gets hurt, he doesn't play as much. Either that or the offense just doesn't.
The worst case
just doesn't click.
First play 0.
Well, yeah, but assuming he plays 18 games, even then, I mean, maybe the receivers don't click. So I went 4,300 yards, worst case.
Right.
Terrell Pryor, 80 receptions, 1,200 yards, best case. Worst case, 60 receptions, 850 yards. That was Rich. That was Tandler's view. What do you think with Pryor?
All right, I'm going to play by the rules this time. I think Pryor, I'm going to go floor first. His floor, to me, is probably 550 yards, let's say 50 receptions, something like that. And the reason I see that is we have, a lot of different receiving options. Kirk spreads the ball around. Pryor just doesn't get any big kind of, game where he's getting 10 balls. Best case, I think he becomes a number one type weapon. And I think the 1,200 yards, 80 catches range could be in his future.
Yeah. Jamal, what do you think? Best case, worst case?
I'll for the best case, I'll stick with I'll just literally stick with Alex's best case. I think that sounds about right. But as far as worst case, I would say I'd probably say about 60 catches, 65 catches. Well, between 55 and 65 catches for about 750, 800 yards, and about 5-6 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I see is about the worst case.
Yeah, I'm more along the lines of Alex on that, because I think we have too many weapons, and if it doesn't click, there's too many other receivers. So I went 50 receptions, worst case, best case 75, just because Jordan Reed's still on the roster.
Right.
Let's go through these last three kind of fast. James and Crowder. Best case 90 receptions, 1,050 yards. Worst case 70 receptions, 850. What do you guys think? Best case, worst case?
I'd say I kind of agree on his worst case that he's got a very high ceiling of well over 800 yards. Best case, I could actually see Crowder blowing it wide open and going for 1,400. I have very high expectations for Crowder.
All right. Jamal, what do you think, Crowder?
I'd say about best case. I'd say about 85, 90 catches between that range. About maybe 1,300 yards and about 8 touchdowns. And for worst case, I'd say about 70 catches, maybe about 750 yards and about 5 touchdowns, 5-6 touchdowns.
Okay. I'm not as high on Crowder as you guys are. I went best case 70 receptions, worst case 50. I think that's a really big leap for him to take. I'm just not sure if he's ready to become, especially given the quality receivers we have on this team, I'm not sure he's ready to go out there and all of a sudden become the number one slot receiver in the NFL, which is basically what you're talking about.
Yeah, I look at him like a Wes Welker or Welker, Julian Edelman.
Mm-hmm.
That's the type of guy that I look at him as. So that's why I could see him having as many catches. I don't see like his yards per reception isn't going to be off the charts, but I definitely see him getting a lot of catches, him and Jordan Reed. So that's why I see him as the best case having so many catches.
Okay. I mean, maybe you guys are right. I mean, Tandler's point was in the article, was that his stats have increased every year. He's gone from 59 receptions to 67 receptions. So what he's going to get to, I don't know. I just don't see him making that big of a leap.
I think he has some speed where he might replace Deshaun Jackson on some of those deep routes, and that might be a big difference maker.
Yeah, maybe so. Jordan Reed, on the other hand, best case, worst case, Tandler put out there 100 receptions, 1,000 yards. Worst case, 60 receptions, 650 yards. What do you think, best case, worst case, Jordan Reed?
Worst case, he's going to get injured and miss a lot of time, so let's say 400 yards. Best case, I'd say about 1,000 yards.
Okay.
Full season.
About best case, I'd say about 250 catches.
250 catches.
250. It's a heck of a lot of catches, man.
Well, I wish, man. Nah. I'd say about 90 catches. It's really around the same as Jameson Crowder. I wouldn't say 100 catches. That's
100 catches is hard
overboard.
to do. People don't realize that.
It's really reserved for people like Brandon Marshall and Tony Gonzalez and all them those type of people, and Antonio Brown, obviously. But for Jordan Reed, his best case 90 catches, maybe about 1,300 yards, 1,200 yards, and 14 touchdowns, 15 touchdowns. Worst case, and I should include injury like Alex did. I would say his worst case would be around 500, 600 yards reception, 600 yards, and maybe about 50 catches and three or four touchdowns.
All right.
Okay. Well, I think Jordan Reed to me is a guy who's going to blow up. And so the best case is he plays 16 games, he's healthy. And if I think that's the case, the offense is really going to run through him this year.
Right.
So I think his best case is going to go over what Tandler said. I think his best case is, 105 receptions, something along the lines of 1,250 yards. And the reason why I say that is, last week I went over the sort of the life and times of Jordan Reed versus Tony Gonzalez and Jason Witten. His stats beat both of them, at this point in their careers. So, and in an offense like this where it's kind of a, this West Coast thing, pass first West Coast thing, I think Jordan Reed could really blow up. Worst case is he gets hurt, so you go however low you want to go with that. I went 30 catches, 500 yards, but
that'd still be
worst case
pretty
scenario,
impressive. Yards per catch.
Yeah. The last one is Rob Kelly.
Right.
Best case, 1,100 yards. Worst case, 550 yards. What do you think about Rob Kelly?
I think it's kind of a trick question because I think he's going to be splitting time pretty heavily with the new running back and with Chris Thompson. So I'm going to say best case and worst case are not going to be that different for him. And the worst case is going to be like 600 yards on the season, with the other guys getting a lot more workload. And best case is he's probably closer to 800.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I agree with the best case about around 800. Worst case, I see about 500, maybe 450. I see it being under 500 only if Samaje takes over the number one role as the primary running back. So. About 450 maybe, worst case. But if they split time, about 800.
I'm so excited to watch the running back competition this year.
Yeah.
My best about Keith Marshall too.
So. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Keith. He underwhelmed. He underwhelmed during. We'll talk about him in our running back breakdown, but he kind of underwhelmed me last year in preseason. But the best case scenario for me, it seems like, is if Rob Kelly completely takes over as the workhorse running back. He beats out Samaje, for the starting job and keeps it for all 16 games. If he does that, he averaged 4.2 yards a carry last year. I think he improves on that. So you're looking at best case at about a 1,300-yard season. I'll go with 10 touchdowns, kind of a shot in the dark. Worst case is Samaje at some point takes over and basically becomes a starter. In which case, Rob's yards per carry would be down. his yards would be down. So I think worst case is something along the lines of 400 to 500 yards, couple touchdowns. Yards per carry less than 4. Mm-hmm. So that's best case, worst case. So there you go. By the way, just real quick, the Redskins signed all 9 of 10 draft picks.
Oh yeah, except
this
for
week.
The Fabian, yeah,
Fabian Moreau. And Adam brought up the point that a lot of third round picks sometimes take longer for a variety of reasons, which is true. But we are now at about $6.2 million in cap space, including those draft picks. So
what you're saying is, if some big name falls off their roster, we still have enough space where we might be able to make a move. Is what I'm hearing.
I'll just throw a name out in Pig Latin. Eldon say Itchardson Ray in Pig Latin. If the Redskins should so desire to bring in another defensive lineman via trade, such as Sheldon Richardson, we could fit him. I don't think they'll do that. No. I don't think they should do that. They don't need to. They just don't need that. But all the fans out there, a lot of them, you guys are clamoring for Sheldon Richardson. We could figure out a way to make him fit under the cap.
Ty Nsekhe and Sheldon Richardson, straight up.
Oh yeah, that'll go. I'm sure they'll do that.
On a mission today.
I am. Like I said, I have part of me that wants to play Moneyball so bad with an NFL team.
I don't even want to go there.
I know.
Don't get me started. It's going to get me on a rant, and I hate the money ball
All right,
thing.
Well,
it doesn't work in football.
That does it for this week's episode. We're way over time anyway. Thanks, guys, for checking us out this week. Keep following us on Twitter. You'll see more about my whole Valor ticket giveaway on Twitter, I'm sure, this week. And, we are in the doldrums right now, but we got some fun stuff coming up in terms of actual Redskins news with training camps shortly on the way. It's going to arrive really quickly. So we'll talk to you guys.
We're praying for a drug suspension or something.
There we go. And that's the end of the show. Bye.
Bye.